Barnaby Joyce, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Barry. How are you, mate?
Very good. Those two seats that lost on the North Coast, and they were in national hands for a very long time. What went wrong?
Well, one, Don Page had been the member for 27 years, and at the changeover, people decided to change. You'd have to note that the National Party, still on primary votes, was the highest primary voting count. The preference flows between Greens and Labor. Obviously, you got the Greens across the line, and we'll still wait for Lismore, wait for the posters to come in. I think it really says something about how politics is working. The Greens vote across the state remain the same. It's just that it's becoming concentrated in certain areas, and of course, Nimbin, Byron Bay, this is a mecca for people who are doing that lifestyle choice. What we also see is the Labor Party has to recognise that they can't go 2 hours from the Sydney CBD and they don't have a seat. They go as far west as they go as the Blue Mountains, as far south as they go as Shell Harbour, and as far north as they go as Port Stephens. I mean, what happened to the formidable political force that Bill Shorten was supposed to be able to be in this election? Here's the case of a person whose best days are not behind him nor in front of him. He just doesn't have any good days.
What about the coal seam gas issue, though? Certainly a candidate in Lismore was pro the industry.
Yeah, I think Thomas was being honest in his position, and honesty comes with a price, but I'll take honesty every day. I'll make a decision about what the final position is on Lismore once the postal votes are counted. What we've seen is the Labor Party is just hypocrisy par excellence. They actually gave out all the exploration licences for coal seam gas, and then they went up there campaigning against coal seam gas and expected people to take them seriously. I mean, Justine Elliott's going to have to really have a good hard look at what's going to happen to her seat, because she is now surrounded, and they're inside the tent, outside the tent, and all around her are Greens.
Yes, but what about your position on coal seam gas and the Nationals going forward now? Because you've expressed some reservations about it, but the electorate seems to be saying we don't want wishy-washy positions on this. We don't want reservations. It's black and white.
Well, Barry, back in 2011, the party that put down an extension of terms for a Senate inquiry into coal seam gas to really start becoming formidable in this debate was the National Party. We did it, not the Greens. The Greens didn't write the extension of terms. It wasn't the Labor Party. It was nobody else. The Nats wrote it. And that's why we came up with the principles that we still stand behind. Don't go onto prime agricultural land, number one. Don't destroy aquifers, because aquifers are common property, number two. Don't destroy people's quiet enjoyment in their homes. Make sure a fair return goes back to the community if you're not on prime agricultural land and you're not destroying aquifers. And make sure a fair return goes back to the farmer if you're not destroying aquifers and you're not on prime agricultural land. We've stood behind this, and in areas such as here, where coal seam gas is also an issue, the Greens got about 2% of the vote. So let's clearly understand that their effect is intensified around Newtown, around Balmain, around Nimbin, around Lismore. It's really the same vote, but in a more intense pockets. That is a political reality, a reality we have to deal with, but it's also a clear question for the Labor Party. Why are they so irrelevant once you get away from Sydney?
Sure,
why does nobody take the Labor Party seriously?
There's nothing like an election result, though, to concentrate the mind on issues. Are you more or less worried about coal seam gas as a result of this election?
Well, we'll still stick to the key principles. See, if someone says, you're not on prime agricultural land, you're not destroying an aquifer, then I think it's fair in that instance that you allow the person who owns the land to bargain for what is a good return, noting that historically that asset, hydrocarbonous material, was vested with the landholder. It was divested by the landholder to the state by Neville Rand. Now, we've got to have key principles, because we've also got to have an economic base to stand on. If we just say, well, we don't believe in coal seam gas across our nation, then we've got $40 billion worth of infrastructure around Gladstone that we've got to try and work out what we're going to do with. And I don't think that even most rational people would say that is a prudent way for our economy to go forward. But we are absolutely mindful of the fact that we've got to make sure we protect prime agricultural land, and that's why in this electorate, which people thought in Tamworth we were going to lose, but we actually got a swing towards us, we made sure that we lobbied the Environment Minister, Minister Hunt, about stopping the clock for Shenhua, because we do have serious concerns about the interactivity between the hydrology and what that could do to the aquifers if a major mine was to go in that area. And we've been fighting for that. We've got to stop the clock. We've got an extension of terms that we asked for. They are now being delivered to the Independent Expert Scientific Committee, but we do it in a diligent, quiet way. What the Greens did is they know they never have to stand behind anything. They know they're never ever responsible for the Treasury bench. They know they can say what they like, and ultimately people are wise up to them. Their vote remained the same. It's just intensified into certain pockets, 2 in Sydney, 2 up the North Coast.
And more generally, is the pressure now off Tony Abbott in the run-up to the budget, or do you take the point that Michael Egan made, is that Mike Baird and Tony Abbott are 2 very different people?
Well, I think there's 2 things going up to the budget. The first thing is the Labor Party should always be careful what they wish for, because if hard decisions are not made by this government, then they'll have to be made by some government, and if they're the alternate government, they'll have to make them. So they should always be mindful of that, and there's some key Labor Party people who tell us that off the record all the time. The other thing is this, that what happened to Bill Shorten? I think there are a lot of people in the Labor Party starting to ask the question, does Bill Shorten have what it takes for the nation to take him seriously as a leader? At times they mightn't like Tony Abbott, but they think he's strong. They just don't have any thought whatsoever about Bill Shorten. He appears to them vacuous, and that is more than just a statement. Have a look at how the Labor Party have gone in this election, away from the bleeding obvious around Sydney. People will prefer to go to the Greens than go to the Labor Party. The Greens are out-polling the Labor Party. They're taking the Labor Party vote.
You talk about the need for tough decisions, though, and in fact in the past you've talked about the debt problem being a financial melanoma that will kill you. And if you don't do something, we go broke.
Yep.
And yet it seems as if that's over, that the government's now saying the heavy lifting is done.
Well, what we're clearly making sure that the trajectory is being changed. I stand by the fact that you cannot just keep on borrowing money and borrowing money and borrowing money and not think that there is not some consequence to those actions at some point down the path. We have to make the hard decisions, and we've been doing our very best to make the hard decisions to turn that trajectory around. Now, we have with us a Senate that really doesn't want to be part of this task, and of course that makes things rather difficult. So we have to deal with the reality that's before us, Barry. We can't just wish the Senate to be another way. We must understand that this is the political reality that's been dealt to us. We've got to do the very best job in that political reality that's been dealt to us. And within that political reality, we have changed the trajectory around, and we are still waiting. We are still waiting for the Labor Party, for Mr Bowen to come out and say, well, what's your plan, Chris Bowen? What's your plan, Bill Shorten? You have got to take the electorate seriously, and you've got to start telling them what your alternate view is of how they would turn around the debt trajectory. Otherwise, obviously, we have to call them for what they are, complete frauds.
Just a couple of quick ones. The government has just announced that it will sign a memorandum of understanding on the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. Are you comfortable with that arrangement?
Well, I think that the Asian Investment Bank, there's still a little way to go there, and I'll wait for that decision to be made public. We have a number of countries now that are joined up with England, France, I think Germany are all in that space, and we have to make sure that this program is in Australia's national interest, and that what it delivers back to our areas of some consequence to the Australian people. I'm sure that there are wiser heads than mine looking at it. I'll have a look at the details when they're finalised.
And the Agriculture White Paper is now sitting on the Prime Minister's desk. When will that be released and acted upon? Yeah,
the discussions keep going on there. I'll be honest with you, I'm making sure we bargain for more money into it, Barry. I want to make sure that this is a substantial document. The Labor Party's food plan, I mean, who remembers it? It just went nowhere. We've got to make sure this is formidable. I could have got a plan out ages ago if I wanted to say nothing, and if we just wanted a motherhood statement. We want something that's vastly more substantial than that. We've already started on a lot of the process. Have a look at it. Country of origin labelling. Said it never happened. It's going to go through. Dams, we've already started them. There's one out the back here. We've got $120 million worth of dams going down there in Tasmania. We have whole forms of redesign that are part of the Murray-Darling Basin plan. We have got 3 free trade agreements through. We've opened up 6 new live sheep, live cattle markets. We're putting the numbers on the table, and we're getting the returns.
It may be this report says too much, though. There was an ABC report quoting a senior government figure as saying that the report contains every crackpot idea from the past 25 years.
Wrong. It's a shame when people say that. This is a response to one of the greatest. The submissions we got, about 1,000 submissions for the white paper. So when someone says it's a crackpot ideas, they're calling the Australian people crackpots. I don't think that's a way to get yourself votes. I think that when the Australian people submit their ideas, you treat them with respect and you go into bat for them, and that's exactly what I intended to do, and that's what I'm still doing. I'm not going to be this sort of Lord on high that lives with the Vestal Virgins down in Canberra and deems to be, for everything that's submitted to them, what's correct and what's not correct. I'll make sure that we treat with respect the efforts and the submissions that have been put to us, and I'll continue to do my very best to fight for as much as I can possibly get.
Barnaby Joyce, thanks for joining us from Tamworth. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Barry.